The autonomy economy is real. Commercial robo-taxi operations, humanless freight runs, AV infrastructure investment measured in billions. The question is no longer whether autonomous mobility scales. It's who advises the companies building it. KPMG works across the full autonomy ecosystem: operators, OEMs, suppliers, insurers, and investors. At the moment it matters most. When the road ahead is uncertain, we've already been there. KPMG, accelerating what's next in mobility.
Tesla is preparing for an initial public rollout of its steering wheel-free and pedal-free Cybercab in Austin, Texas, targeting deployment as early as later this month. The operational plan follows a staged sequence, beginning with employee rides on public municipal roads before integrating vehicles into the broader public awesome Robotaxi service that they already have in play. And now Tesla has been doing this with some ground preparations in Austin, including emergency response training with local first responders. As we mentioned, public road test drives conducted since June, and an official promotional event running through August 23rd, of which many of our good friends, David Moss and Spencer and others, are trying to rig in their favor by taking as many possible rides in the Austin territory as they can. So what's about to happen is huge, and we'll explain why, not only for the Austin market, but what it means for Tesla, the Tesla factory, and also for what's going to mean for Uber and Waymo and others, because this is going to be a seminal event, and that's why it's our number one signal this week.
And I love the way they're doing it. So they're going for rides. I mean, David's the Energizer Bunny of rides. It's really incredible what he does. But then the other aspect reminds me, and you and I were joking before we recorded, we're getting old. And I remember in the old days, to get either dead tickets or fish tickets or other tickets, you had to mail in the request, the dead tickets. And then all the different art that you would have on the envelope trying to get better tickets. Well, Tesla's doing the same thing. You can mail in to try and get it. We've seen some really creative designs on X of individuals that want this. And what you alluded to when you said, and you were right, meeting with first responders, 2 weeks before Tesla launched Miami, same photos were appearing. So what does all of this mean? Because I'm reading this signal says this is really happening. This is not a head fake.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is really happening, and it's a huge step towards the actual physical execution of the larger Tesla plan with robotaxis. And for me, right, the central signal out of this is Tesla, in order to accomplish the task it has just laid out in front of itself and that we just described, they are not seeking federal regulatory approval, federal NHTSA approval, in terms of an exemption petition to put their Cybercab, which has no steering wheel and no pedal, similar to the Zoox sedan, right? Completely different design, but in those two areas, identical. No driving brake pedals, no acceleration pedal, no steering wheel. And they plan to put this vehicle into public use. And as I just mentioned, Zoox, they attempted to do this at one point, which is to put their vehicle on the road without asking for an exemption from the federal motor vehicle standards. That was rejected. And then they were forced to go through this long, exhaustive exemption request that just thankfully in their favor was given to them or granted to them last week. And which is why they've been able to start charging and all sorts of other things, which is a huge win for them. But Tesla, if they move forward by putting their vehicle, their Cybercab on the road without needing an exemption, will not be subject to any of the same restrictions in terms of the volume of vehicles it can produce and the time limit or duration of which those vehicles can be used. So when they put this vehicle on the road, they will then be able to claim that nothing stands in their way from mass producing the Cybercab at any volume that the Gigafactory is able to produce. And that is a huge, huge step forward over any other competitor in this space, right? Zoox has a vehicle that's purpose-built, but is subject to caps because they had to go to the exemption petition. Waymo does not have a purpose-built vehicle yet. I don't believe you and I are not aware of one that they're working on, because we know the Ojais have come with the steering wheel and pedals, and we know the Ionics that they're going to be working on next come with the steering wheel and pedal. And Uber, none of the folks that it's working with currently, Motional, Wave, others, have a purpose-built vehicle. So how this plays out, just for folks to know on a regulatory level, kind of the sequence that you're seeing here. NHTSA has no ability to stop Tesla from self-certifying its vehicle ahead of time. So Tesla can say what it wants. It can tell you it's going to have a launch date. It can throw a big party, because we don't have pre-approval, or what is called type approval everywhere else, where a regulator has to approve the vehicle before you can put it on the road. Here in America, which is unique, our regulators say, if you self-certify, which is exactly what it sounds like. I sign a piece of paper that says, and I put a sticker on my car that says this car meets all the federal motor vehicle standards. You can go ahead and put that car on the road. It's only after the fact, if NHTSA has a question about it, could they take some action. So up until Tesla actually puts this vehicle on the road, puts members of the public in the back, charges a fare, we won't really know for certain how NHTSA feels about their self-certification. And so that's why I call it a seminal moment. The minute those cars go out on the road, whatever date that is after August 23rd, does NHTSA come calling? Does NHTSA not say a word? That particular path, if NHTSA says, wait a second, I got questions, slow down, that will tell us one thing about the future of Tesla's ability to scale and to scale the Cybercab. If NHTSA doesn't say a word, that's the answer in and of itself. If NHTSA says nothing, Tesla can go forth and produce as many Cybercabs as it feels comfortable to do. And that would be a transformational moment for Elon's grand plans with the Tesla Robotaxi.
I'm going to ask you the political question, then I'm going to ask you the engineering question. The political question is, and this data came out from JD Power, the Model 3 and Model Y are the most American-made cars. That's right, the most American-made car. It's the 250th anniversary of America. The president is very, very proud of that. Secretary Duffy has been on this road trip showing America 250, different sites all over. He was just at DJT Airport the other day. Sorry, Secretary, I missed you. Is that an advantage to Tesla before I get to the engineering side of that? Is that an advantage where they can say, look, this is the most American-made Robotaxi, and oh, by the way, it's not using Chinese LiDAR. Does that help them?
It certainly helps them. I'm not sure if that's the primary reason why NHTSA would allow this to move forward under a self-certification regime. I think it reduces the reasons for NHTSA to oppose, right? Now, really what's happening here from the NHTSA end is there are federal motor vehicle standards. There are tests for how vehicles meet each standard, standardized tests, standardized parameters within those tests about pass-fail rates, things of that nature, very specific. That is the first thing that NHTSA is going to look at if it does examine Tesla's self-certification further. And what they will do in particular is look, this is where what Zoox was granted just last week or 2 weeks ago is so important. They will look at those particular standards that Zoox had to ask for an exemption for, right? So they had to ask for an exemption from certain things with telltale signs, with glazing, with rear view mirrors, with side view mirrors, things of that nature, with crash impact, things of that category. I think there were 8 exemptions they had asked for. So they will look, and if they have questions, it's a big if, they will say to Tesla, submit to me the evidence that you used to support why you achieved this level of safety under the standard. And so that will be everything from your traditional types of evidence that any other vehicle would use to perhaps new forms of evidence that meet the standard in a different way. And I've had real world experience with this. And so when I was at Cruise in 2018, we put a petition in for basically a Bolt without a steering wheel and without brake pedals. We called it the T5 because it was track 5 of the different model builds that we were building. And so the T5 petition, when we submitted it, had 21 exemption requests in it, thinking that we needed special exemptions from 21 different federal motor vehicle safety standards. Ultimately, we decided to withdraw that petition, which is a funny story that we can tell on a different day. And then we created a new vehicle, what eventually became known as the Origin. For a long while internally at Cruise, it was called the SAV, the Shared Autonomous Vehicle. When we went to submit the petition for the Origin, we only submitted for 11 exemptions. So like Tesla, in that period between when we submitted the T5 petition and the petition for the Origin, we, along with lawyers, regulatory engineers for each of the vehicles, we thought we had figured out at least different ways to meet 10 different standards in a traditional way, right? So we no longer needed all the same exemptions. And so that's what Tesla's saying here is, hey, there might be 8 things that Zoox asked for an exemption, and they couldn't show how they met those under traditional standards, but we have found a way to do that. And NHTSA may ask for the evidence, they may not. And so it's unlikely that they'll be focused on where is the origin of many of the parts. I think as a political question, after the NHTSA regulatory team and engineers that work for the government look at the standards, that's a potential secondary question, right? In terms of the political decision that comes with it. And ultimately, the Secretary Duffy will have to, if they investigate, will have to sign off on any findings of that investigation. And so there are some political questions that come into play there, but it's mostly a very kind of legalistic review. I mean, legalistic in terms like there's a standard, those standards are clearly laid out. How did the evidence that Tesla submits meet those standards? So it's a very particular examination. Now, they may not examine it at all. I think to me, that's more of the political question is, has this administration decided that in terms of autonomous vehicles, we know they're rewriting some of the regulations to take into account new vehicle form factors. They've been very pro-AV. Is there a political pressure to not interfere with the advancement that Tesla is making here with the Cybercab? So again, I think it's less about the origin of the parts and more about the standards, as well as influenced by some of the political point of view of an administration that wants to see this technology advance and roll out more fast.
A really good answer on the political side. Now, on the engineering side, you and I have both had the opportunity to tour the Cybercab line at Giga and walk the line, and it's impressive. And the way that I saw the vehicle that the Cybercab engineered, it looked like a safety cocoon. The way that the reinforced steel, does that help Tesla from the self-certification? That they are an auto manufacturer, as many people want to say they're an AI company at their core. They still build vehicles, and if you look at their NHTSA crash ratings, they are very, very, very safe vehicles. Does that go into account? And they have the test track, the dummies, and they can put a vehicle through more rigorous advanced testing than a non-traditional automotive company. Does that help them? And has self-certification been done with any traditional vehicles before?
Oh, it 100% helps them. And yes, self-certification is the process that is used for any vehicle that's on the road that's not built built in the way that the Zoox vehicle is. And so, you go outside and look at my driveway. I've got a Cadillac Escalade, I've got a Honda Pilot, and I've got a Jeep out there. All those vehicles were self-certified by the various manufacturers there, right? So GM, Honda, and I forget, Jeep has been passed around now. Is that Stellantis brand now? Those manufacturers self-certified those vehicles. If you go into any of your cars right now and you open your driver's side car door, you'll see a bunch of stickers plastered on there. And that will, one of those stickers will say, this vehicle was manufactured in accordance with, the National Motor Vehicle Act and federal regulations, blah, 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 blah. That's literally the self-certification. And that is all that is necessary for the manufacturers to put those cars on the road. So this is the typical way. And so, yes, Tesla having self-certified the Model Y, the Model X, the Roadster for years and years, as a trusted manufacturer in the United States, that will definitely help them. They are super familiar with self-certification. A lot of the vehicle build and architecture and dynamics are similar between the Cybercab and the vehicles they built before. The fact that they can say, hey, we understand how our Model Y, for instance, performs in standardized crash tests. We understand how they pass the electronic stability control test, FMVSS 126, right? We understand how it passes the rear view mirror camera test, the FMVSS 111. They have all that data for all the vehicles they've ever self-certified. And now they are trying to take a slightly different form factor, right, and self-certify to that. So they have tremendous expertise in this. Just like how I explained how GM, when it went from the Track 5 vehicle to the Origin, was able to take away 11 exemptions, because they have smart people there too, right? And so I think that is a huge benefit to them. The last thing I'll mention on this is within the Zoox petition, right? So this is something that I think a few people have missed. In the Zoox petition itself, in the first few pages, as they describe how they're going to evaluate that petition, NHTSA says something really interesting. It basically tells Zoox and all the folks who commented about Zoox's petition, we are not going to evaluate the ADS performance in making our determination of if the Zoox sedan that they built meets an equivalent level of safety as a Zoox sedan with a steering wheel and a brake pedal would be. Basically, they said, we're just going to look at the standards and say, did you meet those standards by the letter of the law? We are not evaluating your ADS performance. I think that in and itself, when I read that, I said, Tesla's chances of getting self-certification approved have just shot through the roof. Because when NHTSA takes a look at what Tesla has done, if it takes a look, it will necessarily have to say the same thing. We are not evaluating Tesla's level 4 AV stack. That is not the purpose of why we are gathered, so to speak. We are going to look at the evidence for each of the standards, and based upon the evidence that was submitted by Tesla and how we evaluate all the evidence that's ever been submitted by Tesla and other manufacturers about how to meet this standard, we're going to confine ourselves to that particular standard and the methods and methodologies and evidence for that standard to evaluate that standard. We're not going to say, oh, well, but does the ADS perform well around school buses? There's no school bus standard, right? The safety folks, and I'm not to say that without merit, they want to be like, okay, great, yeah, you can meet the electronic stability control standard in an alternative way, because you can still turn the vehicle at a certain angle at a certain speed to see if it tips over. That's what electronic stability control is at a very high level. And there are many people who spend their whole lives on this that probably just passed out when they heard me explain it that way. But that's basically what it is. And yeah, they can find a way to pass that. But some of the safety experts here will be like, that's great, but really what we want to know is if that car is making a turn and it runs into a school bus with a stop sign, is the ADS going to recognize that child? Is it going to recognize a school bus? Is it going to stop? But there's no standard for that. And I think what NHTSA said in the Zoox petition is, we're sticking to the letter of the law. Congress wants to change the laws and tells us what to evaluate. We'll adapt. But there is nothing in the Federal Motor Vehicle Standards that says I have to evaluate the ADS performance in order to determine either the Zoox petition for their argument about equivalent overall safety or the Tesla self-certification. And that is just an enormous victory for Tesla and for anybody else, for that matter, who wants to go down this path going forward.
It's a huge positive step, and under Administrator Morrison at NHTSA, they're doing a good job. And you said they're looking at the letter of the law. In my opinion, by not looking at ADS performance, you're removing political elements from it. You're removing bias. There are individuals, and you know this, that do have bias one way or another. Or you have to have this sensor, you have to have this electrical, you have to have this, you have to have that. By not looking at it, you're removing that bias. Well, this is positive today in this current environment. Before we move on to the risk that Omega uncovered, I have a brain too, and I uncovered a question that could be a risk. What happens with a change of administration? President Trump's out, and let's say the Democrats take the White House. Could they all suddenly turn this spigot off? Or once it's self-certified and it's accepted in the law and filed, that it's good to go. What are those risks? Are there any?
That's a really great question. Generally, precedent, like in the courts, precedent is meaning that the decision has been made in one direction before is adhered to pretty strictly in the corpus of NHTSA rules and regulations. Now, the interesting thing is as Tesla goes forward, and in their announcement, or at least in some of the X follow-up that some of their executives had on the different threads that were going along on X, they mentioned that there are other form factors that do not have a steering wheel and brakes that they are hoping to introduce. Now, each of those form factors could be self-certified by Tesla, but in a different administration, they will have to be self-certified, or they'll have to seek an exemption, right? Those are the two paths. So they will undoubtedly seek to self-certify. If we're under a different administration, there could be a new level of scrutiny, which says, you know what, actually, we are going to look at this from a different perspective. We're still going to look at the rules, because the rules are the rules and they're out there. Now, the rules are going to be updated. That's part of what NHTSA has said this summer. There are things that are already underway, and there are other things that they're looking forward to do, including setting ADS performance standards, right? They're asking SAE, a third-party neutral organization, to help develop actual ADS standards. So depending on the pace of those things, a new administration could be like, hey, I have reason, just based upon our traditional review of federal motor vehicle standards and self-certification, that I could reverse these decisions on, because it will likely be a new form factor by then, so different considerations. And or, hey, now we actually have ADS standards. And so I'm going to evaluate your ADS as part of this as well. And so I would say, yes, it's a possibility. I would say that, for these vehicles, for the, Cybercab that goes out there, the make and model that's out there, that if it gets approved under self-certification, and those vehicles are now in service year 3 or 4 on the road, you're not going to see a new administration come in and say, oh, well, they've been good for 3 years, take those cars off. I find that very unlikely. I think what they will say is, hey, for any new vehicles that you're trying to self-certify, we might have a different way of looking at this.
So, in theory, Tesla self-certifies, crickets, nothing from NHTSA. 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 vehicles out there operating, good track record. If I'm just reading this right, all suddenly Tesla's got a massive moat because they've got that manufacturing line. Am I thinking about this the right way?
100%. 100%. Right? All the talk about the benefits of vertical integration in building a vehicle in large supply at a lower overall BOM cost. And we have to remember the BOM cost for the Tesla Cybercab is estimated to be considerably lower than the Waymo Zeekrs, which were considerably lower than the Waymo I-Paces. So that's a huge win, that to be able to produce a vehicle that has a lower cost to begin with and at a greater volume, and to be able to control that volume, which is something that Waymo cannot do, right? They have to deal with a partner to understand, to build your vehicle around the capabilities and changing hardware, silicon and other things that we've talked about that Tesla wants to do, right? As they move to their advanced chips and things like that. All this now is under their control, which is a huge advantage over anybody else in this field, because they would own both the manufacturing process, the ability to fine tune that process to any vehicle type that they design, as well as to produce at scale that no one else can. And then also have, one of the more advanced compute systems, AV stack systems out there, as well as putting it out through their own app, right? You and I've talked about this for many years with you. There are three legs to this stool. Operational is the fourth leg, right, in terms of infrastructure and depot, and that's becoming more of a reality. But the three legs of this stool are the platform, the software, and the manufacturing. And if Tesla is able to do what no other manufacturer can do right now, it's a huge victory. They have kind of taken the unabashed lead on the manufacturing side over anybody else. And they obviously, I think you and I would agree, they have a little bit of a gap to close on the software side. But the Robotaxi platform, I know we've gotten a lot of flack from Uber about demand aggregators and things like that. But I mean, we've talked to a lot of people privately in the marketplace that work at a lot of these AV developing places, including many who have partnered with Uber. They all want to go with their own app. They do not ultimately want to have to split that take with Uber and become some part of Uber's priority system, whereas they want to be their owner of their own kind of priorities as well. And Tesla has set up well for all three of these stools right now.
And what Tesla has set themselves up for, they're doing what Apple doesn't do. Apple's, if you want to put it on there on a chart, and you want to put it behind me, Apple vertical integration. Well, Apple doesn't manufacture the phones. Foxconn manufactures the phone. Well, you can say, well, why is that different, Grayson? Well, Tesla is going to manufacture Robotaxi. Tesla builds the software. Tesla self-certifies. That's the vertical integration. And you and I talk a lot about depot in a box. Well, Tesla has Robotaxi in a box. And I believe that one of the assets that is not talked enough about, they have the largest supercharging network in the United States. That's an asset to be utilized. And another thing that I've talked about for years with Apple, when we knew they were going to do the car, they can leverage the stores as points to introduce people to the vehicle. They have all the pieces of the pie together. Now it just comes down to execution, which brings us to Omega's risk. Omega had a great risk take here. Tesla has confirmed installed annual Cybercab manufacturing capacity exceeding 125,000 units in Gigafactory, Texas, with production already commenced as of Q2 2026. The unboxed assembly line tooling is not the binding constraint. Rather, unsupervised FSD software maturity, regulatory state and local approvals, and geofence expansion are primary bottlenecks. It's right there. You said it. Manufacturing, we do not have to worry about.
Yeah, look at that number, 125,000 units in a year. Anybody go back and look at the public numbers of what Waymo has contracted for with Geely or what Waymo has contracted for with Hyundai. That doesn't even equal the number that we're seeing here that Omega has uncovered, right? And that Tesla touts. And that's for multi-year contract. This is what they can do every year. And even when you add up all the agreements that Uber has done, right, with Rivian and others, you're still barely beating that 125,000 unit a year number that Tesla can put out. So this manufacturing lead can really show itself over the course of time. Now, the risk points out, right? Great. You can make way more vehicles at a lower cost than everyone else, which helps with unit economics, helps with pricing, then helps with being able to put, the right number of vehicles in each fleet, in each city, which all helps you win market share and win consumer trust as your wait times go down and your price, right? Those are kind of two of your biggest ingredients as a consumer. What's my wait time and how much am I going to pay to get this car, right? And the ability to produce vehicles at a massive scale allows you more flexibility on those two areas when it comes down to actually how does that impact the consumer. The question will be, yeah, I can build that many, but can my car, can my software actually perform across these ODDs, right? Can I handle highway speeds? Can I handle for those airport runs? Can I handle local roads? Can I handle, the 45-mile-an-hour roads with 4 lanes where I have to do an unprotected left? Can I handle situations around school zones, things like that? So that can I handle, particularly as it comes to vision only, right? What happens when my camera gets occluded, or what happens when there's great glare or in darkness, things of that nature. That is a real gating thing for Tesla right now. And they believe they can solve that in a myriad of ways, as we've talked about in previous things, including by out-computing some of their issues, which is why, as you look through some of the discussions that we've had with folks recently, the move from the AI4 chip to the AI5 chip is so important for them. I think the ones that go understated are these regulatory state and local approvals. And that's not just for robotaxi permits. That's for the depots, that's for the charging infrastructure, that's for the maintenance facilities, right? This is where I think the next version of competition moves, right? As we start to gain clarity right now, if Tesla can self-certify, you would say, yes, they're winning on the manufacturing leg of the stool. Like right now, people, I think undoubtedly see Waymo or Baidu as the leader on the software side of things, right? And then on the platform side, undoubtedly Uber in the moment has to be recognized as the leader given the number of volume of rides they do and where they're located. But I think that mode is temporary as Waymo and Tesla and others, they can build their own app. I don't think that, and yes, that's harder said than I think most people realize. I want to give credit to the Ubers and Lyfts of the world. If it was easy to build an aggregator app, everyone would have done it by now. It's a little bit more sophisticated, but I do think that is the one that has the least durable moat around it. But they have to go through these things. So it's, as you mentioned, it's an execution risk now. They have the fundamentals in place. Can they execute? And now Elon has found himself here in this position before, right? Whether it's with Tesla originally as a vehicle manufacturer to begin with, or whether it's with rockets, whether it's with satellites. We've seen this question come his way. And so far, he's 3 for 3 in answering it. So, a lot of execution risk here, but track record is pretty strong.
Track record's extremely strong, and he is one of the men in history that you don't bet against. There's the great documentary of all the blowups of all the rockets out, way out there in the Pacific. He said, okay, we're going to try again, and kept going. And Ashley Vance in his book on Elon did a really good job of breaking that down. If you go back to Tesla, but pre the Roadster platform, I'm drawing a blank on the platform the Lotus platform, pre-Lotus platform. JB Straubel and the team, they were building those on Mercedes, and I'll never forget it. One of them burnt to the ground and burnt a hole, and they were like, okay, the company's over. They didn't give up. And so for the individuals to sit here and say, oh, this is masquerading, you insert this word. No, it's not. The guy is fundamentally proven to the market time and time again. He is not going to give up until he solves it. And when he does solve it, watch out. And you hit the nail on the head with the infrastructure and depots. And we'll tease to the audience because we're opening Omega up in the fall. Omega is very smart on depots and infrastructure because we believe that is a competitive advantage for the market. And so Omega is very deep on that, which brings us to Omega's take. Tesla has built the physical and legal scaffolding for commercial robotaxi operations in Texas. Institutional investors and platform aggregators must monitor Tesla's ride completion rates, vehicle fleet counts, and fleet utilization in Austin as primary leading indicators for robotaxi disruption. Traditional mobility as a service aggregators face strategic displacement if custom vehicle manufacturing achieves lower cost per mile economics, while autonomous fleet operators and Sunbelt municipal regulators must prepare for the rapid operational scaling if Tesla successfully expands beyond initial employee cohorts into the general public commercial availability. I believe it's coming, and I think that was a really good take there by Omega.
100%. And look, that's why the signal here is you got to follow the self-certification question. That is the litmus test for, or the linchpin for everything that comes next with Tesla. And so that is the question that everybody should have circled and pay attention to. Does NHTSA need to investigate self-certification? Does NHTSA let it slide? Let it pass? I shouldn't say let it slide, right? I mean, they may have shown into themselves the right evidence to get to self-certification. So I don't mean any negative implication by that.
Let's summarize this way. Self-certification is the yellow brick road. And you want to follow the yellow brick road because there's a wizard behind the curtain. And that wizard in this case is NHTSA. And in NHTSA, all they want to do is make the road safer for you and I. And from what I saw with Cybercab, I believe they're going to do it. I believe they're going to do it. And I can't wait to take a ride in Cybercab.